All right, everyone. We are now live on Facebook and we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jackson O'Mara. I am an advisory board member for Strong Future Maryland and a third-year political science major at St. Mary's College of Maryland. On behalf of Strong Future Maryland, welcome to our morning's panel discussion on climate education and economic opportunity. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank our co-sponsors, Delegate Brooke Learman, Delegate Mark Corman, Senator Will Smith, John King for Governor, Martina Hazelton, Beth Tomasello, State Innovation Exchange, the Maryland Center for Economic Policy, the Sierra Club Chapter of Maryland, the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, March for Our Lives Maryland, and Hearts Miles Maryland. Thank you so much for showing up to support young people in our advocacy. And to our co-hosts, The Race Thing and Community and Law in Action, thank you for your support. To those in the audience, please take a quick moment to introduce yourselves in the chat and say hello. After that, we are asking everyone to hold questions and comments until after the panel portion is finished and we open up for a question and answer. If you have a question, please DM it to Alice Wilkerson. On a personal note, I just want to personally thank Alice and Maya from Strong Future Maryland for working so hard to put this event together. I've worked with Alice for several years and she has always had youth interests at heart and has always been someone to take me and my advocacy seriously, even when others viewed me as just another kid with a loud opinion. Annapolis can be intimidating, but with the help of people like Alice and Strong Future Maryland's founder, John King, I've really been able to harness my power and my voice as a young person. Not only have I been able to communicate and meet with many members of the Maryland legislature and of Congress, I was able to work directly with John to produce an op-ed on gun violence prevention for the Baltimore Sun, further boosting my voice as an activist. So thank you for everyone at Strong Future for that. Today, Strong Future Maryland is hosting this Youth Voices Forum to continue to lift up youth advocates the same way that I was lifted up and provide opportunities for those in power to truly listen to us and the issues we care about. Now, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Alysa Conway. Alysa is a first-year graduate student at the University of Maryland College Park. Since her undergraduate career, she served as a student advocate and social justice activist at the University of Maryland as co-founder for Black Terps Matter, an anti-racist grassroots coalition that fights to dismantle systemic and institutionalized racism at the University of Maryland and beyond. She also created the COVID-19 Student Task Force, which was a 280+ member task force made on the brink of COVID-19 that served students regarding academic accommodations, COVID health and wellness, first generation and low income services, housing rights, and graduation. With that, she understands the pressing need to strengthen youth activism and integrate youth involvement in critical issues that will be active in our lifetime. Thank you, Alysa, for being here and guiding today's discussion. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much for the introduction. And I am incredibly honored to be here with all of you and serve as your moderator for today. And so now I want to just be able to kind of start talking about what exactly we're going to be discussing today, and then lead into the following questions that we are going to be serving to all of you. And so today we're taking on the challenge to critically think about youth involvement and specifically how youth involvement can and should be integrated into hot button critical issues such as education, climate change, and economic justice that we'll be all reviewing today. So over the past few decades, we have encountered direct impacts on each of these systems and structures, from the adverse seasonal temperatures we're experiencing, the continued use of fossil fuels that are continuously eroding the earth, power imbalances and critical debates that commonly occur within school policy, and the battle of increasing minimum wage and rising standard of living that contributes to continuous systemic and structural inequality. And in response, on top of that, with COVID-19, these issues have evolved itself into how we shape our classrooms, how we manage our work-life balance, and how we can just readily be able to survive in a pandemic that consequently pervades our mental, physical, financial, sociocultural, and environmental health. And now today, we experience rising inflation in gas prices, groceries, and other necessities within an active unemployment crisis. Children are caught in the crossfire with reopened schools during a pandemic. The United Nations had recorded within their climate report this past August that was too supported by NASA on their website that climate change has caused irreversible damage with centuries worth of consequences. So I don't really say any of this to be pessimistic or patronizing or scrutinizing. But I do want to say these things to really strike the importance that we are facing extreme societal and perhaps irreversible consequences, and we need to make sure that we empower youth within reversing these inflicted damages that's sitting literally right in front of our faces. And so with that, I would love to introduce some really bright candidates that took on the call to action to that, to really fight for social change in their respective spaces and be able to do that unapologetically. And so first, without further ado, we have Alex Bourne, goes by he, him pronouns. He is a freshman at the University of Maryland and a political director for the Howard County Young Democrats. So welcome. Next, we have Nate Tinbite, also goes by he, him pronouns. He is the former student member of the Montgomery County Board of Education. Following that, we have Dhruvi Mirani. He goes by he, they pronouns. They're a Howard County student and a former candidate for the Howard County Board of Education. Glenelle, and you're also part of the Glenelle High School Senior Class President. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that's correct. Awesome. So thank you for joining us. And next, forgive me if there is any name pronunciation. I should have spoke of that in the beginning. Feel free to correct me at any point, anytime. Next, we have Nikhitha Balijepalli. She goes by she, her pronouns. She's currently the president of Montgomery County Students for Change. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And last but not least, we have Hanan Miles, goes by she, her, and she is the political power lead for Sunrise Silver Spring. So thank you all so much for participating within this panel. And we'll be following with questions as of now. So thank you so much. And so the first thing that I want to really start off with is really trying to understand youth involvement within the scope of education. And so education in particular really feels like an area where students, their voices, their experiences should be, the most central piece when it comes to decision-making that's centered within education policy. But for some reason, we're not. And that leads to so many critical problems that commonly occurs within education policy, within any critical debates that's commonly occurring within school policy. And efforts literally to give students a seat at the table, such as the Board of Education, have strongly met this form of strong resistance towards that. And so, with Nate, given that you were one that was on the Board of Education, how can you be able to speak about your experience that was within advocating for students on policies that directly impact them, but also follow where students were commonly excluded from that decision-making?
Thank you so much for the question, by the way, and it's good to see you all. So as you guys have seen probably in Howard County and in districts nearby, the student voice is obviously under attack. And in Montgomery County, one thing that is great about exercising the student vote and the student voice is that with the student board member position, those who are on the board have a full vote and are able to talk and push for whatever it is that they see fit. And in all of this also gives a greater opportunity for other students to get involved with their local school administrators, with folks who are in the district that are also moving the policy and making the changes, just because there is a way for them to get their voice exercised at the school board, which is the end voice of the school district. And so it's been a rewarding time being on the board, and we can also see folks like Nick Asante, who's my predecessor, and Hannah, who is on the board right now, able to really get things done while they're there. They're pushing for menstrual hygiene products in schools, electric school buses, changing the capital infrastructure plan to have to focus on highly impacted schools and more diverse areas to really change these structural things. So in Montgomery County, there is a way for students to get their voices exercised. When they're on the board, they're able to push and get things done, but this obviously isn't the same elsewhere. And this is a reason why we need to use at least Montgomery County as the structure for other districts in the state to have a student board member who has a full vote. And that way, those who are students do have an elected representative with a full vote who isn't fearful of those who are administrators and higher ups in the district to talk about issues and push for policy changes.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that. And just as a quick follow-up, I want to see if Dhruvi, as someone who had ran for the board, if there was anything that you would also like to contribute to the previous question about speaking about your experience within meaning to advocate for students that directly impact them but are commonly excluded within the decision making.
Yeah, for sure. We see exclusion of students in the context of student members of boards of education pretty frequently. They alluded to this, but in Howard County, some of the motions made by our previous student member of the board, which were very popular among students, angered a lot of parents who actually sued the school board to get rid of the SMOB's voting rights. And they lost that case a few months ago, but they appealed that case, and it's actually set to be heard by the Maryland Court of Appeals this coming week. And in case that lawsuit does succeed, there's been some conversation among members of the Maryland General Assembly about amending the Maryland Constitution to actually guarantee SNOB's voting rights to make that more clear, which I encourage everyone listening to advocate for in this upcoming session. Also in Howard County Public Schools, every time a school system policy is to be reviewed, it goes through a policy review committee, first where a group of stakeholders take a look at it and make some recommendations. These committees always have multiple staff members, multiple parents and community members, but only ever about 1 or 2 students on them, which I think is super detrimental to actually creating school system policies that work for students. And it became super ironic on a recent policy about student representation when only 2 students actually had input on it. And it became really obvious when I looked at some of the proposed revisions that if more students were on that committee, they would have never gotten approved, like actually adding a GPA minimum for students who want to run to represent their peers as student member. Alex and I actually served on a similar committee reviewing the school system's policy on student search and seizure. And we were actually able to get a few really important changes, like ending police dog drug scans in our schools approved by a majority vote. But even then on that committee, a lot of the staff members were pretty hostile towards us and have tried to even edit some of those recommendations that we made and got approved before it actually gets to the Board of Education for a vote. So it's really clear that we need to normalize outspoken student representation in policymaking, because a lot of groups are okay with students in the room, but only as long as they stay silent or complacent with whatever the adults are advocating for. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It seems like definitely when it comes to youth advocacy, it's a very intimidating force upon students that really want to, really empower the voices and actually contribute towards that social change. But a lot of the time, as why we're even here within the panel in the first place, it's commonly occurred where there are a lot of power imbalances that struck between students and between people within positions of power that feel like that they can be able to control and adhere to how everything is being handled within that situation. So thank you both for your contribution. The next thing we're going to talk about is the debate around SROs. And so the debate about SROs in schools is really interesting, considering the argument for SROs is often about student safety. It's about protecting students from outside threats, but students more than often are not really calling to, or more often than not, calling to abolish SROs versus wanting SROs. And so, Dhruvi, I want you to speak to this if you could, and about your experience for advocating for what students want while being told that SROs are something that you respectively need.
Yeah, and just to give some background on the topic, the debate, while it seems like there's arguments on both sides, when you look at the facts, it's pretty clear that SROs are absolutely detrimental to students' well-being. In Howard County Public Schools, for example, in the last school year we have full data for, 75% of our students who were arrested by an SRO were Black students, even though Black students only made up about 24.2% of the school system population. And there's also just a lot of research showing that SROs simply don't make schools safer. So in my conversations with probably hundreds of students and dozens of clubs during my campaign for student member of the board, the overwhelming majority of them agreed with me that SROs were a negative presence in our schools. And in that election, I was obviously a vocal advocate for removing them from our schools. And in that election, a group of adults who supported SROs launched a massive email campaign against me, trying to reach as many parents as possible. telling them to get their kids to vote for my opponent because he supported SROs. And that really goes to show that students' opinions, and in a lot of cases, empirical evidence can really be an afterthought when making decisions that actually impact students. Because to our Board of Education, the students' voices don't actually matter because it's the parents who are voting for them. It's the parents who are going to support their reelection and give them money and make sure they stay in power. And there's been a lot of really powerful advocacy around removing SROs, not just in my county, but across the state and across the country, like testimony, walkouts, and sit-ins. And in a lot of cases, school boards and other people in positions of power have ignored them because they're just too afraid of speaking out against the status quo, even though the evidence is pretty clear about the effects of SROs that they have on students. And to put it succinctly, it's really time to just listen to students.
Absolutely. And by any chance, while we still have time, Nikhitha, I wanted to see if I could follow up with you if you had any direct responses to that as well regarding SROs.
Yeah, definitely. And first of all, I want to agree with everything that Dhruvi just said. I think that students, especially within Montgomery County, I believe last year we saw the rise of so many students testifying against SROs within our county council and our Board of Education, and giving all of this empirical evidence and giving all of their negative experiences with SROs. And it's just really interesting to see how principals, most of the time, and adults who are just so strongly advocating for SROs, even though every student or most students who've had experience with them are negative. You know, most students who are testifying are talking about these really terrible experiences that their family members, their siblings, who are like as young as people, students in middle school have had with SROs. So it's definitely incredibly important to see how much negative pushback there is against students really expressing their voices and their concerns about this. One thing I am very proud to say is that Montgomery County Public Schools did open this year without SROs for the first time. And that was really, for me, definitely an incredible move. And it was all because of the students who testified, the students who protested, the students who became a part of these task force and groups and really, really push for this. But it's definitely incredibly important to look at other counties across Maryland, and it's really important to make that change as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And granted, we have about 1 more minute left, but we will give it all to Nate to see if you had any follow-up as well in regards to that respective question.
Sure. So first off, I absolutely admire the advocacy of Nikhitha and Dhruvi. And I wanted to really highlight what I saw happen in Montgomery County, which was a replica for just bogged down institutional politics, a hesitancy between school district leaders and their interactions with the council, or preserving relationships, or even hesitancy of tampering with the voter base, which is somewhat the wrong thing to do when you're performing public service work and really trying to champion issues that affect students. And one thing that I think people were forgetting in the conversation is that in addressing student issues that happen, or student issues in schools that are confronted with police, a lot of folks are forgetting that a student getting arrested per se for fighting or outlashing in class isn't because they're necessarily a bad kid, but instead because that student might have had some things that they've had to work through at home, or some external issues that the district can't control. And instead of combating that with having somebody who's armed, who has a gun and a bulletproof vest, the answer seems simple. It's investing in more mental health supports. It's bringing a social worker or somebody who could actually help out that child, instead of giving them the potential to be funneled through the school to prison pipeline. There's a clear disconnect and divide that's covered up by so many folks to say that, okay, police could just take care of this issue, and so they should. But instead of trying to make police act more like social workers, folks should just hire more social workers.
Exactly. Literally could not say it better myself. I feel like that there's such animosity that's commonly introduced to the table when it comes to not only just the discussion of SROs, but within like any related education centered topic that, really wants to adhere to the student voice. A lot of it is kind of given that pushback that Dhruvi was mentioning about how, commonly there's a lot of power imbalance with the fact that a lot of the school board the district members do not really want to adhere to students all the time because of the fact that they know that parents are the ones that are really pulling in the means of support, the means of voting, which gives them that strength to be able to continuously keep their positions. And so they will commonly like to adhere to the parents more so than on behalf of the students. And just of the school to prison pipeline within the introduction of SROs, like that exactly is definitely of a common issue that is always to be seen. And it's very interesting about how politicized that SROs kind of become when largely of the fact it's a humanistic problem within the fact that it does contribute to that pipeline, and it does really rectify major consequences on students, especially students of color, especially Black students, within the utilization of that. And the best thing that we should do, instead of adhering to police, instead of just adhering to mental health professionals, adhering to social workers, adhering to people that are respective within their job and professional within that's a job to actually do what they need to do to be able to serve students and serve these schools. And so thank you all for those contributions. And so even though this conversation was amazing, then SROs, then speaking about the representation or lack of representation or the difference in interpretation of said representation on the Board of Ed, even though these conversations were amazing, we do have to switch. We are going to go into climate now. And I just want to really adhere to listening to all of you panelists about what you guys feel in regards of the respective and alarming climate change that we are currently experiencing as of right now. And so starting with Alex, and I will let anyone else follow up if they would like. What do you think the role should be for elected leaders, government officials, seasoned advocates when it comes to meaningfully integrating youth into decision-making on climate issues? And how should we hold them accountable within doing so?
Yeah, again, I'd like to say thank you for having me here, but we are the generation that is most affected by climate change, because we're just going to be here for the longest. And, despite that, the most people in Congress are all in their 60s or 70s or even 80s, and they're the ones making the decisions about our generation, about the future of our generation and the future of this planet. That's just not just. So really, the best thing that they can do is to actually give us that seat at the table and to also lend their voices to us. They all have a bully pulpit that they can give to us to spread this critical message that we need to do something about this now. So either you can do something, you can give us your voice, you can pass the legislation that we need, or you can get out of the way. You can retire, you can give up your seat to somebody a whole lot younger, someone who actually has a stake in this. You can be an AOC, an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who stages sit-ins in congressional offices, using her voice, using her bully pulpit, passing it down. It's not like she isn't young, but passing it down to the grassroots organizers and activists who are really dealing with these issues. Or you can be like Joe Manchin, who we have to take that voice, that bully pulpit from him, like we just saw last Thursday when Sunrise activists literally surrounded his car, marching demanding that we pass legislation for the Civilian Climate Corps, and literally chanting "We want to live," which seems like the least radical thing you could possibly ask for. But "We want to live" is, today incredibly radical, which is, really quite concerning. But, so like, I guess that's how we hold you accountable, is that we either you will give us your voice in your bully pulpit, or we will take it from you. That's pretty much it.
Absolutely. Would anybody else like to follow up with that question? Okay. No, but I really adhere to your answer, because it seems like there is a profound invincibility that a lot of elected leaders and government officials feel, that when they are like seated within their set positions, that whatever, whatever campaign idea or adherence that they had originally had, what they had when it came to their campaigning process, as soon as they were seated within their set position, they're like, oh, okay, like, can take the gloves off, like no need to really go within any call to action any further, because now I'm here, and like now it doesn't matter to me, unquote, because now I'm within the position. But no, you're biting back against that, and you're like, no, like that doesn't mean that you get to stay just because you got there within the the illusion that you were actually going to adhere to these issues does not mean that it's something that you can be able to take advantage when it comes to that. And it's not like you should be able to take advantage of youth activists that are currently standing up within current issues of climate change, and definitely against the other constituents that are like also experiencing these same issues that are of a lot of the time to be of a lot of younger in age within these experiences. So now it's like it's not even just in basis of appealing to a certain like flirtatious degree on hopefully you can fix climate change, it would be great, like no, it's survival now. And so I definitely appreciate your answer to that, within the fact that like no, like that we are going to be active and we are going to be physical within our response in respect to making sure that these leaders are actually being held accountable when it comes to their current acting against these hot button issues such as climate change. So thank you. And so the next thing is that and this actually is like kind of following up a little bit about what you were mentioning, Alex, and it's to where it feels like older leaders have, and I mean older in a very sweet way, older, seasoned, however you want to appeal to that question. But older leaders really tend to commonly dismiss young activists that are seen as too radical or as too divisive or, respectively misinformed. And Hanan, I know that you are a member of the Sunrise Silver Spring, which is a group that has commonly faced this stigmatization of being radical and divisive, and any other common term that you want to associate with that. And how do you think that stigmatization in itself affects youth climate advocacy as a whole? And what does that do when it comes to informing your personal advocacy at Sunrise?
Yeah, I think one of the things it can do, it can make it really difficult to organize larger protests, because the amount of people who just think like we're just kids who don't know anything about policy, and like we're demanding things that just simply can't be done, like they just won't turn up or they won't like support it. And yeah, Sunrise Silver Spring, just like, all of Sunrise, is youth led. And I really love the environment we've created because everyone's validated and listened to. And I know that I personally prefer working with other student organizations or youth organizations, because I know we're going to be treated with the respect we deserve, versus we've worked with adult organizations before. And this isn't anything against all adult organizations. It's just that we've definitely had a lot of experiences where they feel that they know more than us, or that they just feel that they can talk over us or explain things to us that we already know, and just kind of assume a lot of things about us, where and that's just not really a great environment to organize in, versus I've really never had that experience when organizing with other youth. So I feel like it can just make it difficult when you're choosing to collaborate with someone, or if you're choosing to organize like a larger protest, because of just the amount of people who, even if they're on your side, like just won't kind of respect you as a young person.
Absolutely. And I know that this stigmatization aspect is not something that is, strictly within the experience of Hanan or with Sunrise. Is there anyone else that would like to be able to contribute within the feeling of how their own personal stigmatizations have impacted their own advocacy work? Okay. So yeah, commonly within the experience of youth activists is that we are positioned to feel like that we are respectively inferior or respectively undervalued when it comes to really attacking at these hot button issues within us talking about with education, with climate change, and now even further within the sphere of economic justice as well. And so when we talk about youth activism with issues like climate change, with policing, with education, with racial justice, it really comes to mind. But with one of the topics when it comes with like economic justice, that just doesn't really seem like it's the most common precursor, and it really should be in its own way as well. As young people today are, we're entering an unstable job market. We are experiencing a very fragile employment crisis. And just truly, we're all just experiencing a really uncertain economic future. And so with that, Nikhitha, how does the current state of the economy, from job prospects to rising costs of living, affect you and your peers, either as individuals or as youth advocates alone?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So I kind of feel like there are two different aspects of this question that I'd like to bring up. I feel like the first thing that's really important to say is how, because of all of this, it's so much more important, and Alex was talking about this earlier, that we have young representation within government bodies who can attest to this, who have these experiences, or who understand, the kind of crises and economic crises that young people are entering into, in order to create policy that benefits us. Because it seems like, and just kind of adding on to what Alex was saying, there are these very older people within, our governmental structures that just don't understand this, and they're not creating policy to benefit future generations. They're creating policy to benefit themselves. And I think the other thing is how this impacts us as youth activists is that, and advocates, is that I think a lot of the times we see this rise of different officials and legislators wanting student voices. Sometimes I come across a lot of people saying, I love, student voices. I want to listen to them. I want to hear them. But the seat that they give us at the table is like all of this yellow tape. And it's like meetings at 1 p.m. when students have school. And, all the different things when you're considering what a high school student might have to deal with, whether that's taking an extra job to support their family, taking care of siblings. So I think it really attests to how much important it is that if you want students to work for you, or if you want students to do this work, to advocate, how important it is to pay them, to give them an incentive to do all of this work. Because, from what I've seen in so many of the organizations that I've come across, is students doing like this massive amount of work, this massive amount of advocacy that's benefiting officials and legislators, and kind of almost doing the work for them, but they're not getting paid. They're not getting any sort of incentive to do that, they feel like they have to because they're the only ones there. And the other thing is that a lot of times in Montgomery County, what I see is that there are students at the table, but the students who are really impacted by the issues like economic opportunity, and in Montgomery County, we talk a lot about farms, about, our farms rate, like having people and students and families of lower socioeconomic status at the table to talk about their experiences. They don't have the time or the incentive to be there. It's just, it's only the students who have time. It's only the students who aren't, burdened by different things like taking care of their families, supporting their families, different sorts of economic crises, especially after, the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic have had on everyone's families. So I think it just attests to how much more important it is that student advocates, when they are doing all of this work and putting all of this pressure among themselves to really change and change different structures, help legislators create policy with their voices, how important it is to pay them and to give them an incentive to be there.
Absolutely. So what you spoke about was really in respect to two different things, and I really appreciate both those contributions. One, you were explicitly talking about the exploitation that's commonly involved within the student voice. And then in second thing, you really grazed upon really speaking about how there is a lot of gatekeeping that is also involved within the process of, any potential youth involvement. And so with both of those things, I really wanted to give it up to the rest of the panel, within also seeing how you guys can be able to respond to both of these profound issues that's commonly occurred within youth involvement and youth advocacy, and what older leaders can actually do better when it comes to including and empowering young people. I know Nikhitha started off really well with discussing pay wages, but are there any other contributions that the panel would like to speak about in respect to that?
Yeah, kind of adding on to what Nikhitha just said, like one of the things like I really adhere to, like Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley says, the people closest to the pain need to be closest to the power. And that means all of us, whether it's on climate justice, economic justice, education. We need more young people in representation, more young people who are like actually dealing with these issues on a day-to-day basis, and not, as I said earlier, people in their 60s and 70s who are not going to be here to deal with the consequences of their inaction. Like, it's just mind-boggling how we and like young people are the future. Like, it's just so, yeah. So we do need that seat at the table. We need to be treated fairly and equitably. As Nikhitha said, we need to be paid for our labor as well.
I briefly wanted to say, first off, I think Nikhitha and Alex hit key points, and I think that other solutions are as simple as they sound, in which meetings and public hearings should be held at specific hours of the day, after hours, obviously not during school. And it's also as simple as making an active effort on, as a district, making an active effort, both to the constituents and to the parents of highly impacted households to get their feedback, to get their input. That again could span from people door knocking from the district, people sending emails from the district, people using the communications office to reach bilingual speakers and speak to other highly impacted households that might not be from an English background, to get their feedback on issues. It's almost as simple as it sounds, but you'd be surprised the type of pushback there is to having a meeting after 6 p.m. or to having these people reach out. And that's the problem. It's quite literally making it more accessible and being proactive in this effort instead of actively trying to not have people's voices included.
Absolutely. And when it comes to the common exclusion that's being made in behalf, it's not just in behalf of just the contribution or voices alone, it's also the exclusion of means of the physical presence of the difference in time that students have in comparison to, the seasoned adults within the workforce. That dissonance that's occurred when it comes to the lack of adherence to students. And making sure that there can be that promised seat definitely is a wide array on top of the other associated problems that's commonly associated with youth involvement. So absolutely. And so Alex, I'm actually going to throw it back to you one more time. And it's going to be in respect to the pandemic. And so the pandemic, as Nikhitha was raising within of her answer, has people across generations really rethinking the concept of work as we had traditionally known and understood it. And with that, there is a really dynamic and exponential change when it comes to the culture of work, particularly in the US. And so we're seeing a lot of this energy really coming from young adults in their 20s who were, who were your age just a few years ago, my age is just a number, it's fine. But what role do you see people your age playing when it comes to shaping the new workplace? And what do you think that we should be prioritizing in this process? I should be prioritizing this process. I'm that age now, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think really the biggest thing that we can do is like bring back unions. And we're seeing a resurgence in unions already, whether it's like people up in upstate New York trying to unionize Starbucks, or the surge of strikes. There are 10,000, I believe, people striking with the United Auto Workers with John Deere right now. And that's unions and solidarity is how we actually bring real change to the workplace. So, I mean, through that, we of course must be fighting for, a living wage, which I will say is not $15 an hour. Of course, $15 is a great starting point, but, in Maryland, according to the MIT living wage calculator, for a single adult with 2 children, a living wage is $43 an hour. So, and then of course we need to be fighting for safer working conditions, but also like things like a shorter work week. So, we have more time to, spend doing activism, or other things that you might want to do. And through these unions, we can actually achieve these true advances in the workplace. I'm sorry, I don't remember who was, I think Hanan was discussing this earlier, but, students and youth, we structure our organizations a lot differently. We structure our organizations a lot more democratically than adults who tend to structure it hierarchical. And I think that is a really good change, and it's a change that should also be passed on to the workplace. So through unions, we can be fighting for more workplace democracy and worker cooperatives, where the workers have the actual say over the fruits of their labor, and not the owners. Young people, we keep going back to young people are actually going to be, as we are rising into the workplace, we're going to be having more and more say. And these are changes that we are more in favor of than the older generations. We are more progressive, we are more radical than the older generations. So, hopefully we will be able to achieve these things with, the hard work that we're all doing now.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. But is there anyone else that would like to contribute to the previous question in respect to the culture of work? Okay. Well, I feel like Alex put it quite nicely anyway, so thank you for your response in respect to that. And so this leads us into just respectively the discussion, focusing a lot on what people could be able to do to really improve how they interact with youth advocates, how they can actually emphasize that youth advocates actually are having a seat at the table and having not only having it, but having it be confirmed, having it be seasoned, having it be within within the structure that is already sought within that said organization or within that said agency. And so with that, right, when it comes to talking about the interaction of youth advocates, I want to lead this into a lot more of a positive note because there have been a lot of great critiques, but I also just want you guys to feel empowered and feel accomplished within the work of what you guys had all done in your own special way. And so were there any like positive experiences that you guys have had within advocacy? I know it's tough and rigid typically, as we're fighting for our social and civil rights. But were there any good reflections that you guys think you were able to have within your advocacy work?
Yeah, I could say something.
Oh yes, it's for all.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I remember like going to some meetings with, this is about like, I guess, adult and youth advocacy like together. But they were meetings that were like student led, but there were still plenty of adults there. It was like a coalition of people working for something. And some of the adults had like opportunities where they would be able to speak with our local government, or they had just some kind of privilege where like they could do something that like us as youth or students couldn't. But like at the meetings, they would still like let students speak first and voice their concerns and demands and questions. And then they would use their power and privilege to like communicate that or to do other things. Like it's not that, you know, they wouldn't talk at all, but they would just like respect our experiences and our place in the world as students. And they would try to like keep that knowledge in mind. And they were really helpful. They would like let us know of things that they found out that we didn't know, but they just like, it's weird how rare that was for me, like how surprised I was when I went to a meeting that had a lot of adults, but also a lot of students, and how most of the adults like kind of let us be the leader, even though they were older than us and had like more experience than us. And yeah, that was like a really good experience I had.
Yeah. I remember when I was much younger, I was going to my local industrial area foundation, an interfaith group of, multiple congregations across religions. And we were doing work on school lunches. How can we make school lunches healthier? And I was like really young. I was probably like 8. And my mother brought me to this meeting, and I was, the youngest person there, probably the only person there in school. And we were doing this work on school lunches, and, like it's the little things. And they asked me what my experience was, even though, I'm 8 years old, I'm in 3rd grade. They actually cared and wanted to know what I thought. And those little things make such a huge difference to us.
I'd also say there are a few other big positives out of this advocacy work that we've all engaged in. And my experience, I'd probably say the big one is that you truly do build a lot of lasting friendships when you're coming together with folks who have similar adversity and are pushing for things that you all similarly face. And in my experience, It's people from my middle school and from my high school who, again, share the similar experience of educational inequity with me. We not only hang out after hours and get to know each other, but we also pursue the same equal justice that we want to get involved in. Also, there are a bunch of deliverables with the advocacy that we all engage in, and it's being able to push for something and keep pushing for something and then keep pushing for something. And then finally, when that thing is done, being able to say that you did work on this, and that the people who are on the other side of whatever you were advocating for can start to see some gradual change. I mean, that's big, and that's something that advocacy could give to people. It's more opportunity and a smile on their face, which has the biggest impact on one's day.
Yeah, so we're all here really speaking about, the emphasis of having the positive experiences, the empowerment that comes within really pursuing the advocacy work, the relatability that we all can be able to have and connect with each other when it comes to us having, similar issues, as we all, derive from either similar backgrounds, from similar identities, from similar values, from similar practices. And what is it that we can be able to do to really enhance those positive experiences? Like, what could be done in behalf of, elected officials and seasoned advocates when it comes to moving differently and moving with the youth when it comes to really pressing on these hot button issues? How can we make these positive experiences more normalized in you guys' advocacy?
Listening on its own really isn't enough. I'm really happy to see elected officials and candidates here, but listening is really just a starting point. So after we finish this meeting, after we get off this call, what are you going to do differently? You have to hire young people, youth advocates. You have to pay them. Yes, even your interns. You have to introduce legislation. You have to take real action, because listening without actually doing anything after listening is really pointless. And if you don't, we'll vote against you. Eventually we'll run against you, because we really don't have any time to waste on issues of education, on issues of climate, on issues of economic justice.
Absolutely. Are there any other following comments? Yeah, and so you really nailed that response, and just being of the fact that not only is this important an aspect of impact, but what's also just as viable is time. Time is not something that we're going to get back. And so when it comes to the level of involvement that elected officials and older advocates choose to do when it comes to really incorporating young people into these spaces, either way, that's not going to change the fact that we all have the same 24 hours in a day. And just as much in that same respect, we are, commonly in base of just our means of our age and of where we are positioned in society, is that we are likely to deal with the repercussions that are made in behalf of the older advocates and the elected officials that choose to not use their time wisely within our approaches to these hot button issues. And so I really like the activeness that you had in your answer of the fact that, if you're going to be wasting our time, we're not going to waste ours, and we're going to go ahead and proceed to do what we feel means necessary into making sure that our needs are being prioritized, especially as Alex, Nan, Nikhitha, Nate, everyone contributed the fact that we are to be of that generation that is going to be receiving these repercussions. And so we're not going to take any sort of, lightheartedness, gatekeeping, or exploitation, or anything that is a matter that's done in behalf of positions of power onto youth advocates lightly. We're not going to take that lightly. And so this honestly leads to my final question, which is about the difficulty that it is within being a student advocate, being youth advocate. And so what if all things, you know, when it comes to the challenges you guys experience in each of your respective spaces in your advocacy work, what keeps you moving forward? Like what keeps you motivated when it comes to this work? Because it is very tiring, and I could speak of that myself. And this is to everybody.
One thing for me that keeps me motivated, I think, is when I'm at like a protest or an action or something, and there's just like a lot of people there who are like, maybe some of which I know, some of who I don't know. And I don't know, it's that feeling like we're all here and none of us are going to go down without a good fight. And just kind of like hearing our voices in unison and everyone's story, like why they're there today and like what made them act. And just kind of like, I don't know, just knowing we're all going to take care of each other, even if no one else does. And yeah, just kind of that community at a protest where it's like, no matter what happens, we all have each other. And obviously, like, we hope that we can, like, I mean, we hope that we can have futures, but like, it's not, I don't know, just like sometimes I think it can feel really lonely when you hear about all of like the horrible things happening and how like you might not get to like grow up to your whole, like, for the full extent, but it's kind of knowing like you're not the only one who's going to have to deal with that. Like, even if the worst thing happens, you still have other people.
I think there's something really collectively empowering about youth advocacy, and getting a chance to work with people even younger than you are and seeing how your advocacy together inspires other people to do other kinds of work. When I ran for student member of the board, I met middle school students who are some of the most engaged, passionate people I had ever met on current issues, on topics facing the Board of Education. And I didn't even know what a Board of Education was when I was in middle school. And seeing the way that people even younger than me are able to become empowered and take action by themselves and really move forward, it keeps me motivated.
Yeah, I think so currently I'm taking a class in, the arts and the humanities. And one of the things mentioned in there is that, artists and activists are really one and the same, because we both act on our vision for a better world. We would not be doing this unless we knew that a better world was possible. There'd be no point. Artists, they act for, they practice their vision for a better world in their art, whether that's musical, literary, visual, and we practice our collective vision for a better world through our direct action. So, I mean, that's really what gives me hope is, we all have this view of a better world in the back of our heads. And that collective vision, the ideal we're working for, we just need to know that is possible, that is viable, and that's the work that we're doing. We are envisioning, we are working towards a better world. We are envisioning a better world.
I'd probably say what gives me hope in the pursuit of educational equity is this reappearing reality that comes up to my mind whenever I'm figuring out what I'd like to study, the classes that I'm engaged in, and whatnot. It's similar to Westmore's book that's called One Name, Two Faiths, in which in my specific reality, I have a friend from back home and a friend with me here at school who are the exact same people. However, and quite literally the exact same in physique as well. It's absolutely funny. But my friend from back home, he displays and at most times has more passion and motivation and drive to change his life and choose his destiny than my friend from here. But my friend from back home had to work during high school, has a single mom, a grandma, and was overburdened by a system in which he wasn't able to choose his academic trajectory and have resources that allowed him to get out of high school and choose his destiny. And it's my friend from here and my friend from back home, both of which are, again, the same people in drive and aspiration and motivation. But it's my friend here that had resources and the ability to reduce barriers to opportunity and achievement in academia. That changes his life and allows him to leave college potentially with a six-figure salary and the potential to choose what he wants to do in life. These are two people who are the exact same in my life, but they have they're two people exact same, but they have two different fates. And it's this reappearing reality that keeps me motivated to make sure that one day my friend from back home, whether it's at whatever age he's at that time, or people of similar age to us right now, literally has the opportunity to choose their own destiny, just as a bunch of folks who are in positions of privilege to be able to choose how they pursue academia or life in general. It's reducing that opportunity gap and the gaps to achievement that keeps me motivated and makes sure that I, again, fight for kids like my friends from back home to be able to choose their destiny.
Yeah, and just kind of, adding on to what everyone has been saying. So I'm a senior in high school right now. So in a year, I will kind of be leaving for college or whatever. And I think one thing that motivates me is that, this year, I'm kind of trying to, focus on what I want to do with my life later, what I want to pursue in college, and all of that, and kind of what I want to do with the time that I have still in high school, still in my school district, still with the students in my school district. And I was thinking about it, and what kind of motivates me is at least like if the least I can do here is create a solid foundation for juniors, freshmen, middle schoolers, elementary schoolers who are interested in this work. At least create that solid foundation so that those students can do more. So it's just kind of what motivates me is kind of seeing how much power there is in getting younger students interested in this work, and how much power there is in kind of at least sort of providing that foundation or that solid landing for people to start stepping up and testifying and training them. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all for your testimonies and being able to acknowledge, the silver lining that still is shrined within this the tough field of advocacy work. So thank you all for your contributions thus far. That concludes today's panel. We're going to see if we can end the Facebook Live as we're going to begin the Q&A. The audience, just a reminder, we will be back at 11:30 a.m. For the second policy session. And if you could, for everyone that is in attendance,